one more thing I wanted to get back to was tongues, which is a pretty contested topic, I guess, in Christendom in general. But obviously, particularly with you, you love tongues. Everyone prays in tongues in front of everyone else and all that stuff. Can you talk about for a second the scriptures about tongues and how it says that you can't pray in tongues in front of other people? It's for your own edification. Can you delve into that for a
there's
second?
completely different. There's a lot of different environments where tongues is talked about. If we talk about the one you're just talking about, that's within a body of people, and that tongues there is very specifically associated with the gift of prophecy.
Right.
So a person who speaks in an unknown tongue edifies. How can a body be edified if a person speaks in an unknown tongue? And that's specifically to do with the interpretation of what the tongues is. So it needs someone who operates in the gift of interpretation to understand what the tongues are, but also it's to be able to actually decrease something that's spiritual. So that's completely different than the individual who prays in an unknown tongue, who edifies himself, or the individual who prays in an unknown tongue, speaking mysteries to Yahweh, or the way of the Holy Spirit himself, who then prays through us, making intercessions perfectly before Yahweh, and also in that process helping us with our infirmities. So there's a whole lot of different varieties and ways of speaking in tongues. Also, the word says that we will pray in the tongues of men and angels. And Paul says, I pray in tongues more than you all. And so that means he speaks tongues of men and angels. So it's really fascinating for me how when I discovered that, I was like, so that means I can speak in tongues in my own native language because it's just the language of men. So I started a journey into doing that, and I've learned how to give myself to the Holy Spirit so he can speak through me in my native language. So the word says we'll pray with the Spirit and pray with understanding. How can I pray with understanding if I'm just speaking mysteries? But what happens if I'm speaking in my native language in tongues and I'm listening to myself speak and learning now out of my own speaking how to engage with the presence of Yahweh? Now I'm speaking in the Spirit and with understanding.
So it's much more multifaceted than just...
Absolutely. It's like looking at a diamond from one way and saying that's the only way you can look at a diamond, and you go, oh, look at that, oh, look at that, oh, look at that. And so it's so multifaceted in its usage as well. I've said to people oftentimes, and they say, Ian, I'm praying for you. I go, please don't. I'm not interested in you praying in your language, your will, what comes out of your own heart for me. I'd rather you pray in the Spirit and allow Yahweh to speak through you, his flawless, perfect will for my life instead of what you want. And I've had people praying their will for my life. Lord, just do this for Ian. And it's not Yahweh's will, it's their will.
Yeah.
And so I say to people, stop praying for me. Sometimes it gets such a clamor around my head, when I was... in that place in the hospital with Legionnaire's disease and pneumonia, nearly on that point of death. One of my encounters I had with it was Ezekiel going, "Shut up! I just wish they would shut up," and kind of moving out from the circle of people I was with into the atmosphere. I could hear the clamor of people praying. And then got further out, and then there were people prophesying over me, and I was like, and then I got a letter and an email from one of those who prophesied over me, who I knew would happen, and they were the ones that Ezekiel spoke very clearly about. This person is even doing this, thinking that they're gonna give Ian healing when this has nothing to do with them. Don't they know what Yahweh said if they're saying this? And anyway, it was fascinating. And so for me, again, this is tongues, and so there's a real way that I've learn how to engage in that, and that is by reading the Word, the Bible, in English out loud and praying in tongues in my head, and then praying in tongues out loud while I'm reading the Bible in my head. And it's been an exercise that I've learned how to speak like that, which is really helpful. And it's practice is like anything. You practice your profession and you develop the way that you administrate what you're doing. And it's so much fun.
Yeah, that's cool. It's good to hear. It's good to hear about that again, because tongues is a very interesting subject, because it feels like in churches that I've been in, it's like all good to pray in tongues, but don't do it too loud, which is kind of feels a bit double standardy sometimes, because you're like, oh, I want to pray in tongues, but then it feels a bit weird to pray in tongues because no one else is doing it, and the church doesn't feel that comfy with it. but they also know that it's kind of all good because you're supposed to be doing it. But yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah,
That
it's a
very
real
contextual.
conundrum of religious organizational structured stuff that hinders. And I do understand there's a time to speak loud. There's a time to shut up and speak inside your heart, making melody unto the Lord. And so for me, when the opportunity and the place is there to speak aloud, like we in Thunder Academy will do a 24-hour where these guys, and they stay awake for 24 hours and they spend at least 18 hours of their 24 hours praying in tongues and learning how to occupy space around them as a spirit being and who we are to present ourselves before Yahweh like that. And it's very, very life-changing.